Welcome back with another lecture of current affairs series. Today we will be dealing with 5 important topics from our exam point of view. Okay, the first one is electoral bonds. You can see I have put a picture of electoral bond here. This is exactly how electoral bond looks like. It is issued by State Bank of India. Okay, corporate center. Basically, it is printed by the head office or the office of the head office. Address is printed, but it is issued by specified branches of State Bank of India throughout the country. Okay. So why we are dealing with the electoral bonds? Because there are two very important things. The first one is electoral bonds were introduced with the aim of improving the financial transparency or the transparency in the political funding system. Okay. Time and again, committees like Indrajit Gupta committee, Dinesh Goswami committee, all these committees and Supreme Court also has from time to time expressed its opinion that political funding is one of the biggest source of corruption in democratic functioning of the country. Okay, so to clean the whole political system, the first and very important step of cleanliness would be like Swachhata, as our Prime Minister says, would be the cleaning of political funding. Because political funding, if it is not clean, okay, if it is not from a transparent manner, it is not done in transparent manner, then it will of course create liabilities and obligations on the political parties from the people or the corporates or the organizations from whom they are taking the political funds. Okay, I hope it is audible now. Fine. So that is very important. Then it becomes very important to clean the clean the whole system of political funding, and to make the political parties accountable as to how they are generating their funds. But the problem with the Indian system of political funding is there is only one law. Basically, the RPA Section 77, RPA 1951, Section 77 deals with there's only one clause in the whole act of RPA 1951 that deals with any kind of political funding. Okay. And that too does not deal with the basic nature of funding, but it deals with the kind of accounts a candidate has to maintain during the election. Okay, when a candidate goes to file his nomination, he has to present the passbook or the details of the transactions that have taken place in the separate account that he has maintained since the time of starting of election campaign. Okay, so there's only one article called Section 77 of RP 1951. In 2017, government, with the intention of clearing the whole political funding system, introduced electoral bonds. ठीक है, तो intention तो बहुत ही अच्छा था कि to clear the mess that was created in the political funding system. There were two basic important things that this electoral bond system tried to address. The first one was very small political parties that were formed were receiving huge amount of funds. Okay, and they were not even contesting the elections. In a very recent lecture of mine, I also presented the ADR report, Association for Democratic Reforms. It's an NGO that works for civil liberties and political funding and all these things. Okay, so ADR actually presented a report which says that UP, the state of Uttar Pradesh, has highest number of unregistered political parties. मतलब political parties form हुई हैं, but they were not registered with the election commission and they were not even contesting elections. Their whole purpose for forming these parties was collecting funds in the name of politicians, okay, or in the name of politics. You can also say that these political parties are merely acting as shell companies kind of things, because political parties are exempt from income tax. Okay, the political parties are not required to pay income tax. Okay, but one important thing is they have to maintain one account where debit and credit of the political party are mentioned, but they don't have to necessarily prescribe to any standard format that the income tax department seeks for. Moreover, political parties are banned from any kind of engaging into any kind of commercial activities. Okay? Political parties are banned from engaging into any kind of commercial activities, but they are not banned from making revenue from the non-movable assets. Like if they can own assets like land, property, okay, godowns, but they cannot run some commercial business. Okay? So I hope you understood कि political parties का funding का issue क्या है. So why in news? Association for Democratic Reforms, again the same NGO, the one which has presented report on how smaller number of political parties which are not even contesting elections are collecting huge amount of political donations. So the same NGO has now filed a case into Supreme Court against the issue of electoral bonds. Now, electoral bonds have, from the time of their inception, been in controversies. Why? Because of course, the aim of introducing electoral bonds was to improve the transparency of political donations. But when we see the results, it has completely failed. Okay. Rather, it has increased the opacity in political donations by providing for anonymity. Okay. Providing for anonymity of donations. Okay. But the political donors become anonymous entities. Moreover, there are some reforms or some changes that were made by Finance Bill of 2017 that has made the political funding even more opaque. We'll see in a very short duration of time as to how. And Supreme Court has now agreed to listen to the pleas in the wake of the assembly elections that are going to take place in West Bengal, Tamil Nadu and all these states, Assam, Kerala and Territory of Puducherry. Territory of Puducherry is already undergoing constitutional crisis, है ना? तो political crisis as well. तो अब इन स्टेट में इलेक्शंस होने वाले हैं, असेंबली इलेक्शंस, एंड इन द वेक ऑफ दीज इलेक्शंस द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट हैज बेसिकली अलाउड द सेल ऑफ पॉलिटिकल इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड्स. ठीक है. तो नाउ व्हेन आई से सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट हैज अलाउड द सेल ऑफ इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड्स, दैट मींस इलेक्शन कमीशन हैज नॉट अलाउड. देयर इज वन कैच आई वुड लाइक टू टेल कि it is not the election commission that allows political funding for political funding or for the sale of the electoral bonds. It is the government. It is the government and not the election commission. And why is it relevant? Because when the power of issuing the electoral bonds is granted to a government, that means the power of generation of funds, okay, generation of funds, when the power of generation of funds during an election is given, during an election, like these elections are going to be held in West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, and at the same time now government has allowed for the special sale of what? Electoral bonds. Okay. Usually what happens is the sale of electoral bonds is allowed 4 times every year. Special tranches are also released when elections are happening. So these 4 times are basically windows of 10 days. That means a window of 10 days is opened for the sale of electoral bonds 4 times a year. Usually this happens. But the amendments or the changed rules also say that the government can allow the sale of EBs when an election is going to take place. So this becomes very important because it is not the election commission. Election commission is an independent body. Okay, it is a constitutional body. But government can use this law and the power to allow the issuance of electoral bonds to its own advantage. Okay. If the government sees that, if you consider a hypothetical situation and the government sees that the government is going to lose the elections, okay, so it will disallow the sale of, or it will allow the sale of electoral bonds. because the allowance or disallowance of sale of electoral bonds is not with the election commission but with what गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया. ठीक है, क्यों? क्योंकि आरपीए 1951 is the law, and under these rules या regulations are issued. Now these regulations are not issued by election commission. These regulations are issued by central government. So these regulations allow or disallow the sale of electoral bonds. That means the power of allowance or disallowance of sale of electoral bonds lies with central government and not the election commission. Fine. So accountability set karna, there definitely exists a conflict of interest. Okay, because central government can allow or disallow to the favor of itself the sale of electoral bonds in any election, because central government is empowered to allow or disallow the sale of electoral bonds in special circumstances during elections. Understood? That is why it becomes very important कि electoral bonds were, although they were enacted or they were brought in with the view or the intention of clearing the mess of the political funding, but they have ended up doing the contrary. Understood? Now, what is an electoral bond? I have tried to present all these important factors, and this is a very important topic from the prelims point of view, because I have found many discrepancies because there have been many amendments after 2017. There have been many changes in the law, and many people are not noticing these changes, and they are committing mistakes while solving the papers or the mock tests they are doing. So keeping that in view, I have tried to simplify in the very simplest manner what is an electoral bond. Okay, it is a non-interest bearing promissory note. Now, what is a promissory note? Promissory note is nothing very different. It is not a rocket science. Promissory note is derived from promise. That means the person who is issuing a promissory note promises the person who is holding the promissory note to pay in a future date or pay a certain amount of money. ठीक है, तो if I am holding a promissory note, यहाँ पे लिखा है कि I will pay you ₹10 on next Friday, ठीक है, या 23rd March 2022. So if I issued this promissory note and you are having this promissory note with yourself, then you can make a claim on me to give yourself to make the claim that I should give you ₹10 on the certain date that has been mentioned. Okay, the promissory note is containing two important things. The one is the amount of money to be paid, and the second one is the date on which it is to be paid. Okay, so it is a promissory note, and it is a non-interest bearing. Although it is a bond. What is a bond? Bond is a debt instrument. Okay, there are two kind of instrument. The first one is debt, and the second one is share. Share is equity, and bond is a debt. Okay, it is from money market, and share is from capital market. So it is issued by SBI. Although bonds are managed by and maintained by SEBI. SEBI regulates the bonds. Municipal bond and all these kinds of bonds are regulated by Securities and Exchanges Board of India. This is not, its name is a very confusing thing. Okay, इसका नाम bond इसलिए है because of the single fact that it is a promissory note which seeks to promise to pay the bearer of the electoral bond or the promissory note a certain money in a future, and that is a very similar kind of function to the regular bonds that we buy in money market. Now it is issued by SBI. SBI की special branches में है, वहाँ पे आप जाके bond खरीद सकते हो. And issue कब होता है? Usually 4 times a year, and issuance का window जो है वो 10 days के लिए होता है. Now denomination, but again central government is empowered to issue them in special circumstances when there is election is going to be held. Denominations 1,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees and 1 crore. ये 1 crore का highest denomination है. इन values के bond आप खरीद सकते हो. Validity 15 days from the date of purchase. Okay, if you want to donate to some political party, let's take for example 10 lakh rupees, ठीक है, तो you go to an SBI branch, you give your details. Very important thing is it has to follow KYC rules. It is not exempt from KYC rules. ठीक है, KYC मतलब know your customer. Know your customer मतलब आधार पैन डिटेल्स and all these details to establish the identity of the purchaser of the bond. Okay, so there is a certain contradiction that government says that it provides for anonymity, but when KYC rules are being followed, so of course the bank knows, the issuing bank knows कि who is purchasing the bond or who is purchasing how much of the bond. ठीक है, तो KYC rules are to be followed. तो this is a very important point from prelims point of view कि are the electoral bonds subject to the KYC norms? Yes, they are subject to the KYC norms. Can be only purchased through DD, check, NEFT, RTGS and digital transaction. Cash as a method of payment cannot be used for the purchase of electoral bonds. So the government believed that the prime source of corruption in India is cash transaction, and that is we can see the reflection of that thought in demonetization, although it was a failed exercise. But yes, now DD, check, NEFT, RTGS or digital transactions, they can be purchased only through these transactions. Again, you can see a certain kind of trail of the purchase is being established, even though the government and all the government functionaries are saying that it provides for anonymity, but sir, the bank will definitely come to know who is going to make the transaction. Okay, the bank is having the record, and that bank is a public sector bank. The public sector banks में majority share किसका है? Government का. तो somehow government is having the power to somehow come to know कि who is purchasing what kind of bonds. तो anonymity वाला जो complete anonymity है वो some kind there is a failure in that some that anonymity clause. ठीक है, only those political parties. Now this point C6 explains the eligibility of political parties. Only those political parties which have garnered what at least 1% of the vote in the last assembly elections or Lok Sabha elections, मतलब general elections to the Lok Sabha or assembly legislative general elections to the legislative assembly. If either of the elections में political party has gained at least 1% of the vote, then it is an eligible political party. ठीक है, मतलब बहुत छोटी पार्टियां जो हैं, बहुत स्मॉलर पार्टियां जो हैं या न्यू पार्टियां जो हैं वो एलिजिबल नहीं हो पाएंगी फॉर रेजिंग मनी थ्रू इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड. नाउ फॉर एग्जांपल वन वांट्स टू फॉर्म अ पॉलिटिकल पार्टी. ठीक है, तो पॉलिटिकल पार्टी फॉर्म करना इज नॉट एन इजी जॉब फाइनेंशियली. ठीक है, फॉर एग्जांपल आम आदमी पार्टी वाज फाउंडेड विद अ बेसिक कॉर्पस ऑफ 2 crore rupees that was donated by Mr. Shanti Bhushan. ठीक है, तो now in the present day if someone tries to form आम आदमी पार्टी again, तो they will have जो 2 crore रुपए का डोनेशन है, how will that donation come? Because it is a new political party and it has not contested any election. तो 1% of the total मतलब 1% इलेक्टोरल वोट्स मिलने का तो कोई चांस ही नहीं है. एंड नाउ ₹2 crore कहां से आएगा? Why? Because the Finance Act of 2017 has also made any kind of donation more than 2000 rupees cannot be made in cash. It can only be made under electoral bonds. ठीक है, मतलब 2000 rupees से अगर कम का डोनेशन है तभी आप कैश में डोनेट कर सकते हो किसी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी को. अगर 2000 rupees से ज्यादा का डोनेशन है तो it will have to mandatorily be done into the form of electoral bonds. But a new party which has not even contested election, how will that raise such kind of money? That is a problem. ठीक है, तो now who can purchase? Citizens of India, Hindu Undivided Family. Hindu Undivided Family is mentioned in Companies Act 1956 and Companies Act 2013. ठीक है, तो ये वहां से रेफरेंस है. हिंदू अनडिवाइडेड फैमिली का मतलब कन्वेंशनल जो ट्रेडिशनल बिजनेसेस चले आ रहे थे उनको इंक्लूड करने के लिए है और कोई स्पेशल चीज नहीं है इसमें. एंड इंडिविजुअल सिंगली और जॉइंटली, सिंगल या जॉइंट अकाउंट दोनों में ही परचेज किया जा सकता है. any company has been also allowed to purchase what? Electoral bond. any foreign company can also purchase an electoral bond. ठीक है, तो इलेक्ट्रल फाइनेंसिंग इन इंडिया, लेट्स सी कि इलेक्ट्रल इलेक्शंस का फाइनेंसिंग बेसिकली इंडिया में प्रोसेस क्या है एंड प्रोसीजर क्या है. There is only one law dealing with the electoral financing in India, as I told, that is RPA 1951 and Section 77. So Section 77 says that every candidate at the time of election shall maintain, during the time of election, every candidate who is contesting an election should maintain a separate account where his all expenditures of the elections are being, matlab, all the expenditures that are being made into an election campaign should be made from that special account. ठीक है. And when the candidate goes to if for example if the candidate wins an election and he goes for to the returning officer, he will have to show the passbook of the transactions that has been made from that special account that was being maintained for electoral campaigning. ठीक है, तो अब वो रिटर्निंग ऑफिसर को दिखाएगा. रिटर्निंग ऑफिसर क्या करेगा, ही विल एसेस कि इन्होंने कितना खर्चा किया है एंड ही विल चेक कि जो प्रिस्क्राइब्ड लिमिट है वो प्रिस्क्राइब्ड लिमिट के अंडर में इनका इलेक्टोरल खर्चा है या नहीं है. ऑफ कोर्स देयर आर सर्टेन एग्जेम्पशंस टू मेक द इलेक्टोरल एक्सपेंसेस, लाइक पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज के जो स्टार कैंपेनर्स होते हैं उनका जो ट्रैवल अलाउंस और ये सारा खर्चा होता है, that is not included into what electoral expenditure. Fine, and that forms a major part of electoral expenditure. Now second important point is section 77(3). A candidate cannot breach the prescribed limit, but here's a catch. Who prescribes the limit? It is not the election commission but central government. ठीक है, central government prescribes the limit on electoral expenditure, but election commission can only have a recommendation. The role of election commission regarding the setting of the cap on electoral expenditure is recommendatory in nature. ठीक है, it is set not by election commission but central government under the rules formulated by, देखो रूल्स फॉर्मुलेट करेगी कौन, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट. किस एक्ट के अंडर में, रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ पीपल्स एक्ट 1951. उस एक्ट के अंडर में रूल्स फॉर्म करेगी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और उन रूल्स के थ्रू सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट प्रिस्क्राइब कर सकती है लिमिट. ओके, अंडरस्टूड. Political parties are exempt from taxation. All the donations to political parties, basically the donations to political parties also qualify for exemptions, okay? And under section 80G, and political parties are themselves exempt from any kind of taxations. मतलब political parties को अगर 5,000 crore का भी donation मिलता है तो they don't have to pay any kind of tax to the government of India. Second one is political parties need to file income tax return. Although they are exempt from the taxation, but they need to file income tax returns. Income tax return का meaning होता है कि they will have to tell the Department of Income Tax कि उनका अर्निंग और उनका एक्सपेंडिचर या उनके अकाउंट में पैसे कितने आए और उतने उनके अकाउंट से कितने पैसे खर्च हुए. बट वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज दे डोंट हैव टू मेंटेन सेपरेट अकाउंट बुक्स. ठीक है, जैसे कंपनीज का अकाउंट बुक होता है वैसी कंपनीज का अकाउंट बुक की तरह उनको अपनी अकाउंट बुक्स मेंटेन नहीं करनी होती है. दे हैव टू मेंटेन ओनली वन अकाउंट बुक एंड वहां पे दे हैव टू रिकॉर्ड द ट्रांजैक्शंस. ठीक है, जिनकी वैल्यू स्पेसिफिक वैल्यू से ज्यादा हो. ठीक है, अगर 20,000 से ज्यादा का ट्रांजैक्शन है तभी एक पॉलिटिकल पार्टी मैंडेटेड है टू रिकॉर्ड द ट्रांजैक्शन. एंड दिस वाज ब्रॉट इन 2003 अंडर अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी गवर्नमेंट कि द पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज if they are receiving any kind of donation that is below rupees 20,000, they don't have to necessarily maintain a record of that transaction. मतलब खाली 20,000 रुपए से ज्यादा के जो डोनेशंस होंगे उन्हीं ट्रांजैक्शंस को रिकॉर्ड करने का कंपल्शन है पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज को. ठीक है, now we are dealing with the recent changes that have been brought into the act. Finance Act of 2017 removed the cap of 7.5 on corporate donations. This is very important कि this Finance Act of 2017 removed the cap. Earlier, prior to 2017, what was the case? The companies can donate only 7.5% of aggregate profit. एग्रीगेट प्रॉफिट ऑफ लास्ट 3 years. ओके, इतना ही डोनेट कर सकती थी एक कॉर्पोरेशन या कंपनी, बट नाउ दैट हैज बीन रिमूव्ड. ठीक है, अब एक कंपनी चाहे तो कितना भी डोनेट कर सकती है. अब इसको रिमूव करने का ड्रॉबैक क्या है कि पहले ये इंपॉर्टेंट था कि व्हेन यू हैव टू शो योर प्रॉफिट्स, दैट मीन्स यू कैन डोनेट ओनली 7.5% ऑफ योर 3 years प्रीवियस प्रॉफिट. एग्रीगेट मतलब एवरेज, काइंड ऑफ एवरेज कैलकुलेट होगा, और एग्रीगेट मतलब टोटल, कि आपका 3 years प्रीवियस 3 years का टोटल करके 3 से डिवाइड करके जो वैल्यू आएगी आप उसका 7.5% पॉलिटिकल डोनेशन के फॉर्म में दे सकते हो. दिस हेल्प इन चेकिंग शेल कंपनीज. हाउ? अगर शेल कंपनीज ऑपरेट कैसे करती हैं? दे डोंट हैव एनी काइंड ऑफ प्रॉफिट्स बट दे आर स्टिल रनिंग. दे आर रनिंग इनटू लॉसेस बट दे आर स्टिल रनिंग. What they do is they launder money from these tax destinations and all these things. ठीक है, तो but this act provided कि ओरिजिनल कंपनी जो कि प्रॉफिट रिपोर्ट कर रही हैं, है ना, वही कंपनीज पॉलिटिकल डोनेशंस कर सकती हैं. यानी जो कंपनीज रियल एग्जिस्ट करती हैं एंड द कंपनीज विच आर डूइंग एक्चुअल बिजनेस एंड रिपोर्टिंग प्रॉफिट्स, दैट दोज कंपनीज कैन ओनली मेक पॉलिटिकल डोनेशंस. बट अब क्या होगा कि पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज ये कर सकती हैं, एक डेंजर क्रिएट हो गया है कि वो शेल कंपनी फॉर्म कर ले एंड द कंपनी इज नॉट रनिंग एनी बिजनेस, इट विल नॉट रिपोर्ट एनी प्रॉफिट, बट स्टिल इट कैन डोनेट एनी अमाउंट ऑफ मनी. ठीक है. द सेकंड पॉइंट इज requirement of disclosure of political donations by the companies has been removed. Earlier, all the political donations that the company was making was to be recorded into the account books of the company. But now that disclosure, the requirement to have that disclosure in the account books has also been removed. Donations by foreign companies have been allowed, and cash donations capped to rupees 2000. मतलब 2017 के अमेंडमेंट में ये भी था कि जो कैश के फॉर्म में डोनेशन हो रहा है दैट कैन नॉट एक्सीड रुपीज 2000. यानी 2000 से ज्यादा किसी भी प्रकार का डोनेशन जो हो रहा है दैट हैज टू बी मेड इन द फॉर्म ऑफ इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड. ऑफ कोर्स दिस इज अगेंस्ट द स्मॉलर पार्टीज जिनका इलेक्शन में जो कि स्मॉलर डोनेशन या लोकल लेवल पे जो डोनेशन जो कि मेंबरशिप ड्राइव से डोनेशंस कलेक्ट करती थी, उनके लिए ये मुश्किल हो जाएगा. ठीक है, क्योंकि उनके डोनेशन जो होते हैं यूजुअली 5000 से 2000 रुपीज या 2000 रुपीज से 10,000 रुपीज के बीच के होते थे. तो अगर वो पार्टीज इलेक्टोरल डोनेशंस कलेक्ट करना चाहेंगी तो उनके लिए मुश्किल होगा. इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड्स इंट्रोड्यूस्ड विच अलाउड एनोनिमस डोनेशंस. एनोनिमस डोनेशंस क्यों? क्योंकि इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड डज नॉट हैज द नेम ऑफ द परचेजर ऑफ द बॉन्ड. इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड पे ना परचेज करने वाले का नाम होता है, ना किसको दे रहे हैं इसका नाम होता है. इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड एक कागज है, प्रोमिसरी नोट, उस पे लिखा हुआ है. फॉर एग्जांपल यू कैन सी दिस. सी, जारी करने की तिथि, डेट ऑफ इशू हैज बीन रिटन 10 अप्रैल 2018. वैलिड अप टू 15 days फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ द इशू इट हैज बीन रिटन. And value of the instrument is rupees 1000. These are only 3 things that have been written. If you want to make a donation, you go to SBI, purchase this whole kagaj and deposit it into the account of the party you want to deposit. तो आपका कहीं नाम भी नहीं आया, except for the fact कि when you are going to purchase this electoral bond, there is a special okay. तो when you are going to purchase this electoral bond, you will have to comply with the KYC norms of the bank. ठीक है, तो जब आप इसको परचेज करेंगे तो आपको KYC कराना, मतलब नॉर्म्स को कंप्लाई करना होगा, मतलब आपको अपना आइडेंटिटी स्टैब्लिश करना होगा बैंक के सामने. तो समहाउ बैंक इज नोइंग कि आपने कितने रुपए का बॉन्ड खरीदा है. ठीक है, एंड ओनली द बैंक इज नोइंग, नो वन एल्स कैन नो. पॉलिटिकल पार्टी कैन नॉट नो बिकॉज यहाँ पे कहीं लिखा नहीं है कि इट केम फ्रॉम मी. यहाँ पे ये भी नहीं लिखा है आई कैन, मतलब कोई और भी नहीं जानता कि ये बॉन्ड किसने परचेज करके किसको दिया. क्यों? क्योंकि इस पे मेरा नाम भी नहीं लिखा है. ठीक है. Now what are the key issues? Key issues regarding the electoral bonds are nearly 91.76% of the donations were made in the denomination of rupees 1 crore. मतलब 91% of the donations were made in the form of rupees 1 crore. That means smaller donations are not being made. मतलब only 9%, around 9% of the donations were made in smaller denominations. मतलब आम आदमी is not making all these electoral bond donations. Most of the donations are coming from corporates. ठीक है? Okay, and of course when corporates are going to have a huge amount of power and through of course political funding, so this gives rise to crony capitalism. Now 80.5% bonds were encashed in Delhi itself. This is again the spirit of regional or is again the regional parties, क्योंकि most of the cash was encashed, most of the electoral bonds were purchased in Delhi and encashed in Delhi. जहाँ that means most of the donations were made by such persons who at least reside in Delhi or who are from Delhi, and donations were also encashed in Delhi. That means दिल्ली में मेजर पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज के हेडक्वार्टर्स हैं. ओके, तो इन कैश का मतलब उन डोनेशंस को इन कैश कराया गया, ट्रांसफॉर्म किया गया कैश में. कहाँ पे? दिल्ली में. तो मेजर पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज के हेडक्वार्टर दिल्ली में है, तो यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड कि मेजर पार्ट ऑफ डोनेशन किसके पास गया. तो जो स्मॉलर पार्टीज हैं या जो छोटी पार्टीज हैं, जो रीजनल पार्टीज हैं, उनके पास मेजर पार्ट ऑफ डोनेशन नहीं जा रहा है. तो मेजर फंडिंग वाज रिसीव्ड बाय रूलिंग पॉलिटिकल पार्टी. It's a very important thing कि major part of the political funding was received by one political party, that is the ruling one. Okay. Election Commission has flagged that electoral bonds will lead to the formation of shell companies. As I told कि shell companies कैसे form हो सकती हैं, right? Shell companies जैसे मैंने पिछली स्लाइड में explain किया कि the cap of 7.5% का aggregate profit of the last 3 years that has been removed. तो अब एक लॉस मेकिंग एंटिटी भी डोनेशन कर सकती है. ओके, एंड लॉस मेकिंग एंटिटी, व्हेन आई से लॉस मेकिंग एंटिटी, इट मींस ऑफ कोर्स अ शेल कंपनी. RBI has said that EBs will lead to the erosion of trust of people into what? The erosion of trust of people into the India's bank notes. Indian currency में erosion of trust होगा. The second thing that will happen is money laundering, of course through shell companies. So RBI and Election Commission both have what? Flagged the electoral bonds. But anyhow, the bonds were released. So I hope you understood the issues around electoral bonds and what electoral bonds are. So prelims point of view, what is electoral bond is important. Okay, and the recent judgment that might come from the Supreme Court, that will be important from our exam point of view. Here I would like to make another point that there were two committees formed for electoral reforms. The first one is Dinesh Goswami committee, and the second one is Indralal Gupta committee. The Indralal Gupta committee was formed for the state financing of the elections. मतलब इंद्रलाल गुप्ता कमेटी का रिकमेंडेशन था कि स्टेट मतलब उनके टर्म्स ऑफ रेफरेंस ही थे कि शुड द इलेक्शंस बी डन फ्रॉम द स्टेट फाइनेंसेस, कि स्टेट को फंड करना चाहिए पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज को. एंड द रिकमेंडेशन दैट वाज मेड वाज कि स्टेट्स और सेंटर एक इलेक्टोरल कॉर्पस फंड बनाए. उस फंड के थ्रू कैश की बजाय the help that will be provided to political parties were not to be in the form of cash but in form of kind in the sense उनके advertisements रन करना एंड ऑल दिस, मतलब कैश की बजाय काइंड में हेल्प करो, लेकिन एक इलेक्टोरल कॉर्पस फंड बना के जिसमें सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का इक्वल शेयर है. ठीक है.